is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Cradle, Book 9, Bloodline, chapters 17 and 18. In these chapters, Lindon and Suriel meet again, and she doesn't give him advice so much as she's like, you could be a fucking maniac. Just keep that in mind, you maniac. And honestly, I feel like that's very encouraging, and I don't blame him for responding to it. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Andy for commissioning this episode. So, these two chapters altogether came to 50 pages. But the final chapters, which are going to be, for, the one episode that I have left, sob, is only 35. I have no concern. I am sure I will have plenty to talk about. But I just wanted to acknowledge that things are a little bit uneven. And it's just how it worked out. I can't help it. So, they're very packed. And I'm going to have to really keep on my shit to make sure I don't get too off topic. Chapter 17 starts right where the last left off, where we arrive in Moongrave and we have all of our people and things are feeling like a sudden calm after the storm because they got yanked up out of there. And I really loved how all of this went. Because Lindon is really, in a way, kind of relieved at the fact that he didn't have a choice. Malice just grabbed the fucking ship and teleported them somewhere, and he didn't have to make the decision on whether or not to stay or try again or what to do. And I just totally understand that. You know, there are a lot of times where it can be frustrating in a way to not have a choice about something, but there's also a freedom in that. You know, it's like being a child. And it's a lot easier to tell yourself that, well, it's not your fault because you didn't have a say. And he is, as much as he's like beating himself up over the fact that he didn't save as many people as he wanted to, Dross encourages him to look around at those he did save and is like, you did your best and a fucking monarch stepped in and said you had done enough, and how are you expected to stand up to that? And then Mercy drops a bomb. So we had said that the whole thing is the thing that she buried. I was thinking, is that what linked them to the teleportation? But when Malice's hand appears around the cloud, around the cloud ship, Mercy reacts really badly and is trying to tell her mother to stop. So I couldn't, reconcile those things. And it turns out that what Mercy did was plant an anchor so that they could go back. And if there were a character that would do that kind of thing, Mercy does feel like the one to do it. And I love when she stops and asks, like, does anyone want to go back? Like, she clearly doesn't want to ask. Nobody wants to. That's the thing with this sort of situation, is when you are an actual hero, somebody who genuinely is putting the welfare of other people above yourself, those are the times that separate those people from people like me, who would be like, I'm good. I did my best. I don't want to die. I'll stay. But Lindon, he's made out of different stuff than I am, clearly. So he has to stand there and fucking decide. Because now it's a decision. Now it's been put back into his hands. And now he does have to sit down and make a choice. And his contemplating what to do and holding Suriel's marble draws her attention to him. Now, I'm going to jump back a tiny bit and just talk briefly about Athen, who is concerned that Zeal, Jai Long, and Jai Chen are not there. And Kelsa says, like, Jai Long and Jai Chen left days ago. And Athen's just like, oh, sweetie. And Lindon asks Dross, what happens if the Wandering Titan keeps heading east? He might stop at the mountain. If one of them has a huge power source like that, best to guess that they all do, then maybe he'll feed on that and go back to sleep. If it doesn't, there's no source of aura to interest him for who knows how many thousands of miles east. The Desolate Wilds and Black Flame Empire are too weak. He'll probably stop to feed on something, but more likely he just keeps wandering until he gets tired. Now, I was thinking back. The Desolate Wilds has the pyramid, right? Which drew aura into it. Would that be anything that the Titan would want to eat? And are the Transcendent Ruins significant in any way? Because I very much took it in stride when we got to that part in the second book. And it's like, oh, these ruins that just came up out of the earth overnight. See, there's still trees like clinging to the sides of this pyramid. And it draws aura from the surrounding area. And now I'm like, is that feels like it should be pretty important, actually. I don't know if that's anything, but I just thought of it in conjunction with the Titan needing aura to feed on. And then I just realized, like, we didn't really get an explanation on the ruins. Like, it didn't seem like anybody really knew what was going on there. So I don't know if that's anything, but I just wanted to note it. Because it just feels weird to me that it came up out of the ground when it did. That was like ahead of when, or was it? No, yeah, it was ahead of when Jai Daisho fucks things up and causes Machiel to mess with fate and decide to speed some shit up. So otherwise I would think that was why it was happening. I'm wondering because in the woods before we get to the Desolate Wilds, Lindon runs into a bunch of dread beasts that have that rot on them. And Suriel mentions to him in this chapter to keep an eye out for some things that might be symptoms of the way becoming corrupted. And I'm wondering if the Transcendent Ruins appeared because something got corrupted, if that was something that influenced it. I don't know. I wanted to mention it because it just has been preying on my mind a little bit. So this is the moment where Dross points out how many people he did save. And there are hundreds, maybe thousands, who had made it out on the Akura ships before. Dross pulled up that memory and shoved it right into his mind's eye. The spirit prodded him further. What did you really set out to do? To save Sacred Valley. That was the answer, and they were the words he'd always used to himself when he thought about his purpose for gaining strength. But what did that mean, really? And I love this. He eventually comes to the realization, like, yeah, no, I wanted to, like, help people, but also I wanted to impress them. I wanted validation. I wanted them to see they were wrong about me. And he's embarrassed to admit it. But honestly, everybody is motivated by that to a degree. You know, we can't help it. That's not to say that we don't eventually kind of grow out of that in some ways, or for certain goals, maybe it will become irrelevant entirely because we realize that that's not going to come. We're not going to get that validation. But, you know, I think he's very hard on himself, and that is how Lindon is. He is very hard on himself, so it's in character. But I just felt really bad because he's so like, oh, you idiot. And I was like, man, it's understandable. You know, you are somebody who was treated like nothing, barely a person. I am not mad at you. It's fine, you know? And even if that is part of what motivated you, it didn't interfere with what you did. You didn't let your ego get in the way of trying to save these people, even when they resisted you and tried to let themselves get killed. You fought them on that. And I think that's what's key for me, is that another person may have used wanting to save Sacred Valley as a kind of excuse for gaining power, pretending to themselves that was their motivation. And then they wouldn't go back to deal with the Dread God, or they wouldn't have gone and like really made an effort. As soon as they got resistance from the clans, they might have been like, all right, well, fuck y'all, and taken off. Lindon doesn't do that. He uses the ability that he has been striving toward for the goal that he claimed. That wasn't a lie. So it's a very layered, complicated thing, and I feel for him in the way he judges himself on that. So at this point is when Mercy asks if they want to go back. He asks whether, like, I don't know what to do, help me, as he's touching the marble. And then we go to Suriel's presence. I love that Suriel's got her presence's personality turned down, because she thinks that having too much personality in a presence is unprofessional. She knows about Dross, and I'm extremely curious to hear her thoughts on that. Because Dross is just such a little bitch sometimes. He really is. I love him, but God, yeah. So, and her presence, despite having its personality turned way down, makes it pretty clear, hey, maybe you should go check on Lindon. When shit goes down with the Vroshir here and the Mad King, you may die. So, if you want to do anything, best do it now. And eventually, when she goes, the presence says something like, excellent decision. So Lindon gets pulled into a sort of like Zoom meeting with her. And there's so much, he's such a greedy guy. I love it. I truly do. He's looking around the room at all of the like wild shit she's got, and kind of contemplating whether or not she would let him take things. She's got runes in her eyes, and he's like gazing straight into them, trying to see them, like, maybe I can remember these and write these down. He just wants, he wants all the time. Flowers that radiated life aura, a red potion spinning in a sealed bottle sitting on a tiny shelf. A dagger with a long handle and tiny razor-sharp blade was mounted on a ceramic plaque on the wall. That weapon felt heavy to his sage senses, like the attacks he'd sensed from Malice. A dagger with a long handle and a tiny blade. Is that the scythe? Is that any... I don't know. But anyway, I feel like we're being told these specifics for reasons. Also, I should mention that it's referenced again here, and I don't feel like I'd ever noticed it, but Suriel's nickname is the Phoenix, and her power is to heal. Like, that's specifically what she focuses on. And I don't know if that's, like, related to the Bleeding Phoenix. Like, if there's, I don't know if there's any reason for those things to be connected at all, but I definitely didn't really pay attention to her nickname being the Phoenix until now. And he has this conversation with her without Dross. Like, Dross is kept away. Which I guess makes sense because Dross can't view his memories accurately. So she doesn't trust Dross to record what it is that she's talking about with Lindon. Which I guess makes sense because, this is some heavy shit. So she and he discuss his future. He tells her, I need you to save Sacred Valley. And she's like, I did. And he thinks that she means that first time in the first book. And then she's like, no, I sent you. I really liked this a lot. You are my solution. Fate has been accelerated, so this day arrived sooner than it ever should have, but now it's here and you are in position. Apologies, but I'm afraid I might be weaker than you think. I don't mean to argue with you, but I am not ready. And he says he would strain himself to his limit. But he understood where his limits lay. He wasn't powerful enough to save everyone. Ready? She leaned forward and tapped him on the forehead with 2 fingers. Suddenly, he was seeing through someone else's eyes. Crouched, shivering, on the deck of a cloud ship as men and women in Akura colors passed out hot food. The people from Sacred Valley had divided themselves, clans and schools sticking with their own kind, but there were at least a few dozen visible, and he saw a few heading downstairs, suggesting more on a lower deck. When I said I already saved them, I meant I already did. Or should I say, you already did. There are so many people still back there. You don't have to save everyone, Suriel said. It's a lesson you learn and learn. I wasn't the one who told you to save Sacred Valley. You decided to do that. So you decide when you've succeeded. And you decide who you're going to be after that. And this was exactly my question, guys. Last episode I said, now that has been that milestone that he's been working towards this whole time that was allegedly 30 years away. Now it's here. Now what? What does he do? And he watches a few different things happening. He was hovering over Sacred Valley, 1,000-mile cloud beneath his feet. Yaren and Athan floated to either side, and the wandering titans stared them down. The 3 of them unloaded their most powerful attacks in coordination, and they struck a heavy blow, until its tail caught Yaren. Lindon lunged out of position, and the hand of a Dreadgod closed over him. Lindon died. Then he was on Windfall, and he decided not to go back. The months sped by as they gathered the remainders of Sacred Valley. There were more survivors than he expected, tens of thousands of them. They resettled Sacred Valley, one restored building at a time. The suppression field was weakened, and somehow the vision skipped over this part. He managed to deactivate it completely. Lindon saw himself looking virtually the same as he did now, tutoring his 3 black-haired children in the sacred arts with Yaren at his side. His future self reached out, scanning the children and checking each of their twin cores. And I was like, oh, guys, I truly, I don't care about romance in most things, but this is just so well done, and I really love the 2 of them together, and it just made me really happy, and I really liked it. Then he follows that up with, there were futures where he and Yaren split up and went their own separate ways. No! Do you hear me? Don't you dare. How dare you even say that? Futures where he had children, futures where he and Yaren ascended from Cradle in months, even futures where he married Mercy. Word? And there were futures where he killed the Dreadgods. He saw himself years into the future, one arm white and one coated in what looked like black scales. His eyes black pools with white circles. Wild. I am into it. He stood over the crumpled body of the wandering titan, cycling its power. Northstrider loomed up opposite him, moving for the titan, and Lindon appeared in his way. He's fighting Northstrider for the energy from the titan. Rad. Then we have him cutting apart the Silent King to get at his binding. Outside, the world trembled under the pressure of 3 remaining Dreadgods, but he had his prize already. He could do what no one had ever been able to do, forge a weapon with the power of a Dreadgod. And I was like, this is so... Guys, I love this so much. What a beautiful little storytelling device. Being like, I'm going to give you a little glimpse of some shit that could happen. If it happens, it will still be rad as fuck, because I gave you only a taste. If it doesn't, you're still aware that possibilities that metal exist at all, which is just inspiring. It just keeps you interested, you know? I am into it. And she tells him, those were just a few potential futures, not by no means an exhaustive list. And I love when she says, how many people from powerful families with unending resources have made it as far as you have so quickly? The gray ghost of a woman appeared over her shoulder and began to speak, but Suriel stopped it with a gesture. I love that, because her presence is trying to be like, oh, I can answer that. Bitch, no, shut up. That's not what we want here. And at least I'm assuming that's what happened because of the timing. But she also like stops and has a chat with it. I really enjoy that she exchanged words with it that Lindon was not permitted to understand. Just, the suggestion that, oh, she just like scrambled that real quick so that he wouldn't be able to hear. And any sage will tell you that every path boils down to one: improve yourself. But you're a sage yourself now. You should know the rest. You improve yourself, but not for yourself alone, for greater purpose. This is my purpose. No, this was your goal, not your purpose. So then what is it? You have the chance to show me that. Weishi Lindon, show me the future. And he comes back into his body, and he goes and advances. And his advancement phrase is, I advance. Which is so good. It's so good, y'all. The dragon advances. The satisfaction. I swear to God, it was everything I wanted. Yaren hasn't taken this step, right? If I'm not mistaken. No, she did. Hers was, I am not my master. And she was mad because it didn't feel like it was even about her, which is fair. I don't know if we know Mercy's. I don't remember if... Y'all can help me out. Sammy says the ruins were one of the entrances to the labyrinth, I think. Oh. I wonder if the Transcendent Ruins, appeared because of something that Rhaegon Shen did. I don't know. Interesting. So, he advances. I love when he's talking to Dross. And he says, that it will help against the Titan to advance. And Dross says, help is such a strong word. So Orthos stands right next to him as he does this. And the treasures burned to colorless fire swirled through him. Unlike his Underlord revelation, which felt like it had deconstructed and rebuilt him from head to toe, this advancement was a cleansing. The soul fire passed through him in a hot wind, searing and comforting at once. His channels grew stronger, his cores flared brighter, and the lingering weakness from his time in the suppression field was washed away. In seconds, Lindon walked away as an overlord. He could have imagined it, but it seemed that Akari's remnant nodded to him. I love that detail. I'm kind of wondering if he doesn't absorb Akari's remnant at some point, because she was a pretty powerful dragon, but I think that to become a monarch, you have to absorb your own remnant based on the memory that we have of Northstrider. So I don't know if he can do anything with Akari's remnant, but there's something about her that I have this weird sort of affection toward, and I think it's just because she was instrumental in him developing into what he is now. That whole trial in Ghostwater was so key. And despite the fact that she was horrific to him and that her sister was a monster, there is a part of me that sort of appreciates her for that. So I kind of enjoy that she's still around. So as he leaves, Orthos says, I would like to use these. And I'm like, oh, he's going to advance too. Lindon held up one hand to Mercy and she tossed him the scripted stone. Hold on a moment, Athan said, but he was standing too far away. Lindon caught the stone and focused his will. He met Yaren's red eyes. I'll see you soon. Return, Lindon commanded himself. In a rush of blue, he vanished. You son of a bitch. Honestly, I was so impressed. I was mad at him, but also I was like, of fucking course he did. Of course he did. Personally, I was very proud of him. I figured that they would turn up because I did not expect them to allow this to stand. But I really am curious how they get there. I don't think that we know yet. But the idea that he was willing to just go by himself is truly everything that Lindon is all about. That's just so in character. And it's part of why we love him and also part of why we get so mad, you know? I mean, how many of you, show of hands, definitely did not want Lindon to go back? A big part of me didn't. Because, of course, you're worried and you don't think that he's going to be up to a dread god. But on the other hand, I don't want him to be a character that's willing to settle. So I honestly wanted him to go back in a way. I think more of me didn't, but a part of me did a little. Jan says Mercy advanced off screen, so we don't know what her revelation is. I'm guessing. Ethan's will is strong enough to follow. Evil says, Lindon Yaren fighting outside the ancestor's tomb after the sword sage had died there led to the rising of the pyramid sooner. Oh. Weird. Huh. I wonder why. Is that like, let's see. Carrie's died true gold. Her remnant is not worth consuming, but it has been tamed, so it's not useless to keep around. Huh. Interesting. I just feel like she could be done. Something could be done with her, you know? I don't know. Make her a guard. But she's only true gold. Maybe you could feed her, though. I feel like they say you can feed remnants and get them, like, jacked up in power, right? I gotta focus. I'm sorry, you guys. Okay. So we go to Jailong. I just need to say again, you guys, how much I fucking love Jailong. I am so glad that he's back into this story, because I was just so sad to say goodbye to him in the 4th book, truly. I've really enjoyed his development as a character. I saw a lot more potential in him, and I kept being like, maybe he'll be back this book, and then he wasn't, and I'm so glad that he has been given an opportunity here. Jai Chen, I'm also very into, but I just don't know her very well, you know? And Jailong, I understand his motivations a lot. And the battlefield is really bad right now. They are getting absolutely crushed with these fucking blood spawn. And they are fighting and really doing a hell of a job. I mean, in comparison with everybody else, especially because they are so much more advanced. But it's really getting grim. And Jailong looked east, and he saw a swathe carved through the forest ahead of them. Black spots were dashing across that space, and only by focusing his spiritual perception did he realize those were dread beasts. First a few, but that trickle almost immediately became a torrent. Dread beasts were famously enraged by the approach of dread gods, and the desolate wilds was home to more dread beasts than anywhere else he'd ever heard of. Coldly, Jailong realized they were about to die. He had known they might be killed by the Wandering Titan, but that was like being killed by a thunderbolt, or torn apart by an aura storm, which I don't know if we've heard about aura storms before, but that sounds scary. It was a force of nature you could do nothing about, and at least it was over in a moment. Now, the blood spawn would wear them down. Even if they escaped, there were dread beasts ahead of them, and the Wandering Titan behind. And I really did sort of feel his weariness there. I also was like, god damn it. So he does his best, makes like a script circle in order to protect them from the dread beasts, very reminiscent of Lindon and Yaren in the woods. And it helps with some of the blood spawn, but not all of them. They would die now, only slower. This was nothing but a way to stall for a little more time. But wasn't that every day? And I was like, well, he has a point. Can't really argue with that. Soon he was fighting with nothing but the strength of his limbs as the last of his Madra failed him. If nothing else, he would die before his sister did. And I just really enjoy how committed he is to her still. So then, we go to Lindon's POV. I'm going to skip his POV, and we're going to jump back into Jai Long's POV. Jai Long had felt Lindon arrive. Even exhausted and weak as his spirit was, he could sense the arrival of a spirit much stronger than anything in his immediate vicinity. He didn't feel any hope. He was too tired for that. It's like fucking same. So the sky lights up. Striker techniques rush out in every color. Dread beasts exploded into corrupted flesh. Bloods aspawn were torn to essence. Where monsters were, light followed. Jai Long's weapons fell from numb, tingling fingers. He had seen sights like this before, when an entire sect of sacred artists unleashed a barrage of striker techniques all at once. He turned to the source. Lindon hovered in the air, his back to Jai Long, which I don't know why. I just love the fact that Lindon doesn't see Jai Long standing there. I think that's so much like, it's not for him. He's just doing his shit, doesn't know Jai Long's there, and takes off. He was surrounded by a halo of shining constructs firing in every direction. I love that he's hovering in the air, too. A rainbow of colors streaked out from him, and just for that moment he looked like he had sprouted a pair of wings made of light. For a frozen moment he hung there, blazing like a many-colored phoenix. Ooh, phoenix again. Then the striker techniques stopped. The world settled down. Compared to the noise of battle before, the silence that settled over them felt unnatural. Jai Chen hobbled up to stand next to her brother, her mouth hanging open. A sound returned with a deep rumble. Lindon summoned a 1,000-mile cloud and flew off. Sage of twin stars, Jai Long thought. He believed it now. Then he collapsed. Yeah, I am super into it. I loved all of it. Any time that we get to see Lindon from somebody else's perspective, it's always a treat because he just doesn't see himself very clearly. And he is so unaware of, like, I think his own personal... I think Lindon overestimates how much of his success he owes to his advancement and underestimates how much he owes to just who he is as a person. And things like this, where he's made all of these constructs, it's, you know, not any sacred artist at his level would even be able to do that necessarily. And also, of course, there's dross as a factor. But it's he is somebody who absorbed dross when a lot of people wouldn't take that risk, because he is always eager to do a new thing and to try something experimental and just wants to know how everything works and pulls things apart to understand them. That's who he is as a person, you know, that's not just the advancement. So when you see moments like this where he's able to do something due to certain skills that he has acquired because of his interest and curiosity and eagerness to learn, it just feels really earned, you know? I really like it. And Jai Long has been so paranoid this whole time about everybody's motivations. And there's a part of me that really thinks that seeing how beyond him Lindon is will help him realize that were Lindon interested in revenge, he would have done that shit. That's clearly not the point. So maybe it'll help Jai Long just chill a tiny bit. I don't know. Let's see. Jake says, the way Will uses other POVs to show how awesome Lindon has become is one of my favorite writing tricks ever. Absolutely. Throughout the whole series, those are some of the best scenes. They're just so satisfying. You know, it's like, And like I said, even though we don't get what we wanted out of Lindon coming back to Sacred Valley, at the very least we have the one scene of his sister seeing him for the first time. That's like a shadow of what I was hoping for. That's not to say I'm disappointed by the book at all, but you get what I mean. Austin says, I still remember the what the fuck realization when Chen mentioned he's 6'3". Yeah, it gets mentioned quite a lot, how tall he is and how broad his shoulders is. And I forgot to mention that his dad asks if Lindon has his jawline. And I think that Kelsa, is Kelsa his mom? Kelsa's his sister, right? His sister says that Yaren is a sacred artist. She doesn't care about Lindon's jawline. And his mom says, I'm sure it didn't hurt. And I was rolling because, like, Mom, you're right. I am certain that him being 6'3" and apparently jacked and super hot is no problem. Oh, God. Fisher Gesha said he was the world's biggest copper. That's right. I forgot that. I miss Gesha. I was thinking about her the other day because I was watching something and a character in it had sincere, like, Fisher Gesha energy. And I was just like, oh, where is that bitch? I hope that she's safe. So then we go to chapter 18. And I am not going to get too into this fight between Machiel, the Mad King, and Suriel. Because, frankly, they're bouncing in and out of fucking time and shit. It's beyond what I can understand. I am not entirely, like, clear if I'm supposed to understand it, to be perfectly honest with you guys. That's how I felt about a lot of the Abaddon stuff, and rereading it was much more interesting because I understood so much more that going back, I appreciated the Abaddon scenes from the start much, much more than I could the first time. It's not even more than I did. I was not capable of it because I just couldn't follow it. So in some ways, I feel like that is a lovely payoff. And in other ways, I wonder if that isn't a detriment to the books. If you really cannot understand something the first time through. I know, like I said, a friend of Owen's tried to read these, and the Abaddon stuff felt so completely beyond him that he gave up reading. I didn't feel that way because I was so interested in Lindon's story that the Abaddon thing didn't bother me that I didn't get it. But I could see that for some people that might kind of be the breaking point for them. But I will just say that they, like, the Mad King is talking, and then it says that, like, Daruman is talking, and the mention of, like, going from a different side of time, or now he's on the other side of the planet, but then he slices the iteration in half. There's, like, a lot happening here. The razor was a tool for violently separating the diseased from the healthy, and the Mad King was a blight on reality, a cancer. She cut him free, the space around him glaring bright blue as she cut at the fact of his existence. His armor anchored him, and he struck back a wave of darkness and spinning multicolored chaos. Thousands of stars vanished, removed from reality, erased from existence. And eventually, shit gets bad enough that she has to flee with Machiel. Like, bail. That's how fucking serious this is. It's truly upsetting because we've just seen Suriel overcome so many apparently complete disasters, and she's able to almost bring everything back to new again. She's able to resurrect people, rebuild buildings, move oceans, and, you know, like, she's just so powerful. And seeing how little she can do here is really upsetting. As Machiel popped back into reality, physically only a meter away from the king, he swung his massive sword two-handed, the full weight of his will behind it. They had seen this blow crack his armor, but in the microscopic instant that Machiel used to swing, Suriel saw her vision of the future warp and twist. Warning! Deviation detected, her presence warned. The sword of Machiel landed on the blade of the scythe. The clash between the two weapons blasted a crater in the central planet of Oasis, and tens of millions died instantly. That sucks. Oh my god, that is just brutal. I really want to know what Machiel's going to make of this, because he's such a dickhead so much of the time. And I can't help but feel like he's the type of person that, like, when they pop up somewhere else, he's going to be like, why did you even save me? That wasn't part of the plan. You know, like, he seems like such a complainer. But I might just be projecting, because he didn't do everything exactly the way that I wanted him to do. And I don't like the fact that he woke up the Dread Gods early, because fuck you. So I might just have a problem with Machiel, and that's like my issue. And then we go back to Lindon. He gets face to face with the Titan. And I'll tell you what, guys. It occurred to me that in this book he would face off with Titan. But we have just been given to understand how completely out of his power level the Titan is, that I eventually let go of that possibility. I was like, well, obviously now. Well, it turns out that even though those truths are still there, and that he is wildly out of his power level here, he's still doing it. So I don't know why I ever thought Lindon would not just do the thing that's super dangerous, but because it's sort of the right thing to do. Sort of. I say the right thing to do, asterisk. Because, you know, like, is it? It's the brave thing to do. It's the selfless thing to do. I don't know that those are the right thing, but I get it. So, he asks Dross for a battle plan, and Dross is like, I have a retreat plan, guy. I don't know exactly what you thought, but it's certainly, I'm not going to fucking participate in the suicide attempt, so I'm, you know, thanks for checking in. Got nothing for you. And I will say that Lindon is at least, like, aware enough of shit that he starts to shake violently, because he is genuinely afraid, and he should be. He asks, why hasn't it left the valley already? I'll show you if you promise to take me far, far away from here. And even though Dross says that, he also shows footprints. It had walked north, stopped at Mount Yoma, and then headed east again. Why? Now it was examining Mount Samara, and Lindon felt an inhalation filled with hunger madra. The Dread God was sniffing for something in the mountain. That wasn't an attack, and the Titan was still trapped in the suppression field, but Lindon still hoped the act of breathing in wouldn't be enough to kill the people at the Dread God's feet. He had the impression the Titan had been at this for a while, and Lindon fervently hoped it would continue for even longer. And then, the Dread God, described as like an old man reaching for his medication, the Titan reached up toward Lindon. I don't know why that description got to me so bad, but I fell out over that. Like an old man reaching for his medication. Okay. Weird. I like it, but it felt odd in the moment. I don't know that that was the place for it, but it certainly is evocative. And, you know, it also gives us the impression that, like, Lindon is medicine for this thing in a weird way. So, Lindon, like, flies backwards before realizing that it's actually reaching for the circle of light. And Lindon's feeling kind of protective of Samara's ring. He's like, I'll be damned if you fuck this thing up. You screw the rest of the valley, but don't you do this. And I'm wondering if Samara's ring is linked to whatever being they have, like the subject one. You know, if it's creating that ring, or if that's part of the suppression field marker, or what's going on there. But he pours Overlord Soulfire into Black Flame and adds his will and shoots it through the suppression field, and it just fades to nothing. It's truly upsetting to see how ineffective. I thought it would do something. Nope. Not a thing. A dark fist closed over Samara's ring. The light was forged Madra, an ancient construct, and the Dread God tore away a chunk as though it were made of rotten wood. Bright white and gold essence drifted upward like sparks of a campfire. The rest of the ring hung in the air, but the light over Sacred Valley darkened. So, space cracks behind him, and Yeren dashes out. She shot through the air to land on his cloud. And I really love Yeren's whole thing. She's like, if you thought you could leave me there. And she's not even like really mad. She's just like, you got me fucked up. You had to know you've got me fucked up, right? Just that energy. 100% here for it. He said, I couldn't ask you all to come protect my home when I'm not sure I can keep you safe. Did you? I'd contend. You asked us to stay behind. But we're not exactly tripping over people who can tickle dread gods. My list ends with me and you. And then Mercy comes stumbling out of a different spatial crack with Orthos shoving forward. And he has advanced. And then here comes Athan. I said, put me on your list, Athan called up. You couldn't hear me, could you? And at this point, everybody has sort of gotten on board, despite in a way knowing that there's nothing they can do. They're basically onboarding to do their best to delay the thing and probably die in the attempt. And they're still going for it. And Lindon is like simultaneously touched that they're willing and also upset because he feels like now he has to worry about them and it's going to split his focus a little bit. So mist formed in his eyes. They didn't need to be here. If he had full control over his abilities, he would have sent them back. At the same time, he was glad they were there. Aw, that's sweet. Very sweet. But I'm going to need you all to focus so that we don't die. First of all, none of us move until the Titan does, even if you stand still until your fleshy human feet decay. Objective 1. We're holding it back as long as we can. If we lose and it breaks through the mountain, we leave. Objective 2. Don't die. Wait, how about we make that Objective 1? So, thus begins the fight that leads to them beginning to be split up so that Dross has to go in a few different directions and give everybody their own part of the battle plan. I am really curious about, okay, so first of all, 8-Man Empire. Is it possible for our guys to combine into some other kind of like 8-Man Empire-esque entity where it's like they've all got a contract with one another that elevates them as a group to another ability level? Also, the representative from the 8-Man Empire that Yeren was speaking to kept having that itch on the back of her neck, and I'm still wondering what the fuck that was, because that was clearly something, and I want to know what it was. And I feel like there was something else I was going to mention here. But yeah, I just keep thinking about the 8-Man Empire because we have such a tightly knit crew here, and it feels like they trust each other enough, but I don't know what level we'd have to get to before they'd be willing to sort of like depend their abilities on one another and their advancement upon one another. So they flew toward the Dread God. A ball of stone and chaos formed in the Titan's hand, and a blue-white spear of the Hollow King pierced it through. I won't go into every single thing, but it's fighty, everybody doing their bit. I Outside Sacred Valley, a direct hit like that would have killed Yaren. Lindon had already begun drawing up his will again, preparing to command the Dread God to stop, or at least to try. "We talked about this," Dross said desperately. He brought up Lindon's own memories. Neither Charity nor Malice had commanded Dread Gods directly. They had worked their sage powers through their techniques. Lindon opened his void key. He wished he had kept Saphara's, since she had a heaven's torch, the ultimate source of fire aura, but his own fire treasures weren't too bad either. In moments, Lindon gathered black and red aura into a cloud swirling around him, blended the ruler technique with Madra forged into a dragon's claw, fueled it with a focused application of the burning cloak. Crystallized black flame Madra covered his left hand, trailing black and red energy behind him as he shot toward the Titan. As the Dread God squared itself and roared, Lindon felt another source of aura, blood and sword gathering at its feet. He reached out for the void icon. The three of them all triggered their techniques. It detonated in a black explosion. Black flame. Not black and red. Pure black flame. Lindon wanted to keep up the barrage, but he had wrung himself dry. They had already unleashed power on a scale that Sacred Valley actively suppressed. If the heavens were kind, they would have at least gained the Titan's attention. Dross spoke in a panic. "Oh, yay! We did it!" Oh, my God. Guys, this made me so anxious. Truly, this gave me such anxiety. The Titan breathed out onto Athen, and Athen goes down. We wind up in his POV later, so we know that he's okay. He's not great. I think his injuries are worse than he's letting on, but he's alive. And Lindon has to hide in his void key as the Titan's tail comes down on the spot where he had been. This whole fight is just it is echelons beyond anything we have ever watched Lindon engage with before. And there's a big part of me that's hopeful. I'll tell you what. I don't know if Will White is going to be doing this or not, but I know that the Dresden Files, for example, is a book series that tends to sort of go in waves, where there'll be something that's an arc that's really high energy and action, and then you'll get something that's a bit more of a cerebral story to follow that one up before you get into another very, very, very high action, high tension, high consequences story. And I have to admit, I'm hoping that the next book is called Breather. And it's just Lindon getting, he can still fight people, he can still advance, he can still, but just a little bit less. Just a little bit less. I would like him. Everybody's talking about how don't just pursue advancement for the sake of it. You need to take a break. We had Zeal as well as Fisher Gesha all sort of yelling at him to enjoy his life. And they keep being sort of proven wrong that maybe that attitude is what makes a normal person. And Lindon is not normal. But I wouldn't be mad if we just slowed it down a tiny bit. So I just had to say that here in the spot where Lindon hides inside his own void key. So here's when he says, Dross, give me something. I gave you all the advice you need. Don't do this. We can get away. And Dross says, what about Yaren? Well, yes, of course we're going to save Yaren. I'm not a monster, but then we can leave. I don't want to run, Dross. I want to win. Lindon, I don't want to do this. It's too much. I don't have anything for you. No, now, hold on. I don't have anything for you. Alone. Brace yourself. His thoughts carried the impression of great pain, so Lindon prepared himself. I can handle pain. Oh no, This is worse than just hurting you. It's about to hurt me. So then we go to the split. Zeal's 1,000-mile cloud. So Dross pops into Zeal's head. And he's like, hey, buddy, real quick, we're going to need you to... No. Let me finish. Just do this thing and then... No. Look. Dread gods don't fight to the death. If the prey takes too much energy to beat, they back off, and everything takes too much energy here. We're just pushing it back a little, that's all. That's all we're doing. Not going in for the kill. Zeal tried to say no a third time, but he couldn't stop himself from imagining what it could have been like years ago to watch the weeping dragon turn around and drift away, looking for easier prey. Fine, he said reluctantly. That's a promise. You promised now. You can't break it. And that's perfect, because I was lying before. I needed to do more than just make platforms. I needed to make a lot of platforms. And I just loved that. That's perfect, because I was lying before. Oh, Dross. I love you so much, buddy. And I love Zeal. You know, I can't wait to see more of Zeal and understand what he's about a little bit better. So then we go to Mercy. And of course, Mercy's whole reaction, because Dross is like, hey, I want you to do something that's going to cause you excruciating pain. And it may break you. Your family will be able to fix you, right? But it will really, really hurt. And Mercy's immediate response is like, oh yeah, no. I would much rather do that than like watch my friends die. I will be fine. Please don't make me watch somebody go through what Pride just went through, because that nearly fucking killed me. So yeah, I'll do whatever. Ugh, Mercy. She's such a good egg. Truly. And I just really felt that energy too. You know, there's when you feel the kind of guilt that she felt about Pride, which was it was misplaced. But she still did. It is so suffocating, that kind of guilt. And even if you don't feel guilt over it, just watching somebody that you love be in pain is so difficult. So I really just totally understood her position here. No matter what Dross wanted her to do, it wouldn't hurt as badly as seeing Pride so badly hurt. She didn't want to go through that again, not so soon, and not with Lindon and Yaren. What do you need from me? Your bloodline, Dross said. What do you want from me now? Orthos rumbled. Normally, there's nothing an Underlord can do to a Dread God. And he's like, what do you mean, Underlord? And Dross is like, did you think we didn't know? Was that supposed to be a surprise? You have to know that we knew, right? And I was like, also, yeah, you made it very clear that you were about to advance, Orthos. What do you think that they thought you were doing? Of course we know. There is nothing wrong with a little celebration, Orthos said with great dignity. No. And in fact, I can make it even better than a surprise. A huge event. You'll really show them. They'll say, Underlord Orthos is so great. I can't believe we ever cared about him before. I really hate who he used to be compared to now. I mean, just hate him. Oh, God, this made me fucking cackle. That I love, attempting, a being who doesn't understand compliments, trying to, create one, or a sales pitch, as it's called here. He is so off base. Oh, we love you. We love you, Dross, but god damn, you're really bad at this sometimes. So then we go to Athen. And he manages to cushion his fall, and he manages to stay alive. But it's really, really bad. You know, he's just... We have been so used to Athen taking damage, us being worried, and it turning out that he is... I don't want to say faking it, but he has been letting people think he's less powerful than he is so that he doesn't attract too much attention. And it's been very upsetting in this book. Now, most of us are near enough Ethan's level. Near enough. He's Archlord, so it's not quite. But we're close enough that he feels like less of a complete backup plan and answer to our problems than he ever felt in other books. And he's getting hurt in genuine ways here that are actually dangerous to him. It's the first time that we've ever felt like he's in danger before, you know? Combined with the fact that his bloodline ability was so suppressed that he couldn't see things and was left open to betrayal and, you know, people being used as hostages. The whole thing is just, it's really hard to see Ethan sort of, I don't even want to say brought low, because that makes it feel more extreme. He isn't quite brought low. It's just that he's brought to the same level as everyone else in a lot of ways. And that feels like he's being brought low in comparison to the place he used to occupy. So, yeah, Dross manifests to him, and his first question is, how many ways have you split yourself? 6, Dross panted. It's a lot, but I'm fine. Maybe. I'm probably fine. So he asks the role that he has to play. The Titan is going to throw a striker technique at Lindon, and I need you to stop it from hitting him. Where? I'm not quite as ambulatory as usual. We'll get you down, don't worry. Just worry about stopping the technique. Please do worry about that. Ethan tried to make a gesture of agreement, but his hand was trapped beneath his body, and it pulsed with pain, except for his fingertips, which were completely numb. That could be a problem, he thought. No problem, he said. Oh, dear. Don't love that. What happened to you, Ethan? Did he lose his fingertips? Are they cut off? I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe he lost his hand. Maybe he has to get a remnant arm, remnant hand. That'd be a little bit of payback for Lindon. Because, yeah, I do still hold the tiny grudge that Lindon lost his arm. I do. It all worked out. He's got an amazing weapon from it. Granted, but still, I do feel a bit of a way about it. So then we go to Yaren. Spit it out, Yaren growled. She was still under the Dreadgod's spiritual pressure, and time not passing was only extending that agony. Sorry, I'm doing a lot right now. You solid, Dross? Yeah, no problem. Nothing to worry about. Listen, we need something from you, but it won't be much fun for you. I'll say that. You see where I'm standing right now, true? Would you contend I'm on a holiday? We need you to hold the Titan in place so Lindon can hit it. You'll need to use your sword. Could use Netherclaw, if that'll work. It won't. Sword will make it through, though, right? Dross hesitated. Dross? I think this is one of those times where I'm supposed to lie, but I don't have a whole lot of time. You'll have to overload the sword. No way around it, unless you're ready to advance to Archlord. That would solve a lot of my problems today, actually. And she asks if the Winter Sage could fix it. And Dross is like, oh, maybe. Actually, yeah, maybe. That's a possibility. And she's like, you know what? I'm about to die. If I'm not willing to sacrifice a goddamn sword, I'm an idiot. So, yeah, sure. I'll overload the sword. It'll be fine. I'll have to signal to the others, but you just do it when the foot comes down, all right? Not likely to forget that one. And she tried to nod. Dross must have gotten the picture because the world came roaring back to normal speed. The Titan's foot came down. And that is the end of the chapter, and I had to stop there. I hope you guys all appreciate what I sacrificed for you. I hope you all know it's really hard being me. It's really hard life. I just have to wait. This book came out in, April? May? When did it come out? I had to wait until June. It's disgusting, frankly. I don't know how I tolerate it, this treatment. But there it is. I sacrificed for you all. Jan says, I love that he chose to remain a turtle. I forgot that he could change forms, Jan. Oh yeah, Orthos is anything other than a turtle. Can you imagine? No, sir. Oh, I would hate it. Oh, God. Yeah. No, Jen, good call. Oh, my God. I'm just thinking about, like, if he became more, like, humanoid and how disturbing that. No. Mm-mm. Reject it. Hate it. I just hate that whole idea. Evil says the next book is called Tomb Raider. Oh. Is that real? That feels like a fucking prank. You know what? Don't confirm or deny. I'm just going to go ahead and think that that's not real. If it is, we'll deal with that when we come to it. But Austin says, no, it's not. It's Reaper. That's a pretty dope name. Not as good as Breather, unfortunately. But, you know, can't have everything. Not everybody's going to have the innate talent for titles and concepts for books like mine of Lindon going on a tropical holiday, finally, for the whole next book. It's just a book full of, like, cocktail recipes. Oh, God. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me. Thank you again to Andy for commissioning this, even though, Andy, I hate you. But I love you. But I do hate you, though. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.